What's up, bro? It's your boy Mike Muse. We're going to have a conversation on the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be with my returning guest. This dude, you guys loved him. You guys loved our conversation. I love when you guys love a good conversation. And I love how the conversation always continues. You guys see me with the DMs on Twitter and just around, and you guys always ask about certain guests. And this guest, O-T, is someone who is definitely one that got asked a lot about. Before we came on, he said that he feels the pressure to deliver another great conversation. And audience, I'm not letting him off the hook. I told him he has to deliver. Like, my job is really easy. I just have to turn the goddamn thing on, and then it's up to my guest.
Well, yeah, but then you got to throw in the question. You know what I mean? You got to.
Nah, I'm just here, O-T. I'm just here to help you. You know what I mean? That's it. That's it. I turn it on. I'm like, okay, I'm good. It's up to you. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? But O-T, so the pressure on you, but the pressure is on me though. Right now, you wanna know why? You probably remember. We spent so much time with me nailing your name the first time.
Here it is.
We went back and forth with that. Do you remember we went back and forth with that?
Yeah, we're ready for
the first time. I was so proud of myself. You saluted me. You applauded me. I messed it up the second time. I got it right the rest of the times. But are we ready for the big moment? I've been practicing.
I'm ready.
Mr. O-T Fagbenle. No,
oh, no.
Right? No,
it's a common switch over. It's Fagbenle, and lots of people say Fagbenle, but it's Fagbenle. Fagbenle.
Bro,
I know.
You give me anxiety with your names. As we talked about last time, I pride myself on names, and yours name gives me so much anxiety because so many things can be silent, not silent, right? And me and my homie, we were joking.
It has the GB in it, so it's Fagbenle, but in Yoruba you say be Fagbenle, and that be sound, which is like a GB at the same time, it's quite hard to get.
Fagbenle. Yeah. And so the thing about it is, me and my homie the other day, we were just having fun. I'm a linguist. I'm a big geek, O-T. And so he and I were just playing like wordsmith gaming and naming nomenclature, and we were making certain vowels silent, right? So we was like, well, in this case, should your G be silent, right? And then what would it sound like if a G was silent, right? And so we started having this great name game. I'm a big geek. Don't ignore me.
So
ignore me. You don't want to come to brunch with me, O-T.
Well, you know what? Here's a little bit of trivia for you. I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like Shakespeare wrote his name. I think there's like 8 recordings or something like that of Shakespeare writing his name down. And in none of the recordings of him actually writing his own name are they spelt the same. He spelt it differently every single time. Yeah.
What? That's amazing.
I know. I don't know why I find that so interesting. I guess because people are just can be so stuck on spellings and can you spell correctly? And here is Shakespeare, the most revered master of the English language, and he doesn't even spell his name the right way, the same way.
At all. He mixes it up, right? So it's almost like what are we prioritizing? And then sometimes the things that we prioritize isn't a big deal, right?
Exactly.
And so it's like, is my work what's important, right? Do you see the scope of my work, my words, right? My language, my storytelling ability? You're so caught up on like this name that you're forgetting the entire story arc and the character development of what we're doing. So funny you mentioned Shakespeare. I'm in the Shakespeare mood right now. I had a great conversation with Denzel about Macbeth, and we really began to kind of just unpack Shakespeare and what a cold brother he was, right? In the sense of like the way he created this tormented character. That was done so well in the sense of a character development of Macbeth. So Shakespeare is one of the greatest writers of all time, my guy.
In England, you can't, if you're an actor, you can't say Macbeth if you're doing another play. It's just like it's this weird kind of like superstition, and so that if you say Macbeth while you're doing another play, disaster will strike. So true story. In England, if you're ever on the stage, you'll hear actors call it the Scottish play.
Oh, okay. So we got a little insight from you.
I'm giving all the trivia today. The pressure of the conversation has brought out my trivia.
You're gonna make me so dope at my next brunch, right? This coming weekend, man. I'm like, so I was talking with my homie, and he was talking to me about the Scottish play. I bet you know what that is, right? Yeah. And they're gonna be like, "Do tell, Mike. Do tell," right? So I mean, that goes to the range of things that you can do. I've always been impressed, I think with last time, with the range of different scripts that you choose to engage with, different characters that you choose to engage with. I think your range is really incredible, but I'm really excited. And I actually asked you when you're going to come back when you did The First Wives. you're going to be playing President Barack Obama. And I asked you if you could come back and we can talk about it. And here we are. You're back. Yeah. And I'm excited to talk to you about it because it is debuting April 17th, which is just right around the corner, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting because I was just speaking on air all last week regarding President Obama being back in the White House. We saw his return recently when he came to the White House to visit President Biden to sign off the Affordable Care Act. And it was this refreshing moment to see this human being return to the White House. It was almost this moment of democracy was coming back together again. I'm not here for you to get into politics. I don't want you to do that. But I felt for a period of time, we've lost ourselves here in the States, and we've lost our sense of democracy and the meaning of democracy, and really understanding that democracy has always been this gentleman's agreement, that it was anything that was really etched in stone, right? There's nothing in the Constitution that says things have to happen a certain kind of way with everything, right? A lot of it is just a handshake, right? And this understanding, right? Because we believe in the Constitution, we shall do certain things. But over the last, let's say, 8+ years, we've seen an erosion and a gentleman's agreement just isn't there. So it felt refreshing to see President Obama back in the White House with President Biden. I felt like this continuity of democracy was rejoining us. Talk to us about where you think First Wives would fit into this space, right? Of the backdrop of our democracy possibly eroding, or maybe not, depending on your perspective. But what role do you think First Wives would play at this current time?
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess, the advantage of having like two sides of the spectrum, the checks and balances, as you were, kind of that tension helps bring about a middle ground which tries to serve everybody. And of course, if it becomes too contentious, then it becomes pathological. And to some extent, I think there's an interesting relationship between presidents and their wives. Of course, for many presidents, and I'm sure for Barack, like his wife is one of his main confidants, one of his main people that he gets support from. And similarly, you want a state of, honest criticism, constructive criticism, some tension there where you can have someone who pushes back, because you don't always want a yes person with you. But at the same time, you don't want a pathological relationship, because that would be completely, not constructive for someone who has so much power. Looking at Barack and Michelle, it's a really inspirational relationship. You're aware of, it's actually really hard to fathom how much pressure they were under. Every first lady, every president is under unbelievable pressure. That's why people's hair goes gray. But as we know, even more so for Barack, because, I guess, he was looking down the barrel of the worst economic crisis that America had seen in generations, which I think people sometimes forget that we were, people were really predicting the end of the times kind of thing. And then the second, the pressure of being the Black man, the pressure of being that icon. And, just seeing how they manage their relationship through that, I thought is kind of incredible.
Yeah. When you look at the pressure that this man was under, for a certain amount of time, and you had to examine it, right? I'm sure you didn't have to examine every speech, right, and everything. Did you begin to look at democracy different, right? Because you have a different lens, right? Like growing up, because you weren't born and raised here in the States, right?
No,
you were born and raised in the UK, right? So, did you, when you began to examine this character, began to examine this subject, did you begin to have a different thoughts about democracy and the different ways of how governments function, both over here and both over in the UK?
Yeah, it's funny because obviously the politics of it is really what we know, President Obama being, connected to. But this story is really about relationships, and in particular, the relationship between Barack and Michelle. So for sure, you read about it and you go, wow, what a quagmire, and how complicated the politics of things are. And there's certain things I might look back on and go, oh, wow, I thought he did a really good job there, but maybe he didn't do as good a job as I thought he did. And other places where I was like, oh, wow, I didn't think he did a good job there, but actually did a much better job than I thought was you know, given the circumstances. But I think, you know, pretty soon into my research and discovery of him, I tried to hone in on this idea that we know what Barack is in front of the camera. And to some extent, if an audience wants to go see that, go on YouTube, press it, and you can go watch it. What we wanted to serve up is what happens when the door closes. Who is Barack Obama when the cameras aren't on? And that's something we don't know. It's something I don't know, but it's something we wanted to have a go at telling the story of. And like we know, it's really shown through the lens of these first ladies, these incredible women.
And what lens did you guys, because what I'm gathering from you is companionship. So I'm curious now in terms of like the examining of companionship. I have a book, if you saw me look over my shoulder here, I have a book just above me called The First Friends. And so it's a story in a collection of all the president's best friends, right? And the role that they played in helping shaping, in part, ideology, helping shape, in part, policy. And if nothing else, just being a confidant, right? And so discussing with you, you know, first wives and how first ladies, the role that they play, I think there's the examination of companionship, right? And what did you think was the important element of the companionship, you know, as you began to look at this examination of this relationship between Barack and Michelle?
I mean, there are so many, but I guess one of the things I became quite fascinated with was the antagonism Michelle had towards President Obama becoming president. She really didn't want it, and for very logical reasons, I might add. You know, it means what it is to run for presidency is absolutely crazy. The havoc it brings into people's lives, the security risk. You know, it's also to remember, I mean, a lot of us thought he was going to get shot. You know, that was like, you know, and it's one thing if you're like, hey, I love this man, I want him to become president. It's another level if that's the father of your children. And so there was a lot of antagonism, and I kind of felt an undercurrent during the presidency of, I don't know, Barack making it up to Michelle. I'm so sorry I'm doing this presidency thing, I'll make it up to you. And and that was just a really interesting dynamic, because it's not what you immediately think of. You think, oh, well, my partner's going to be president of the United States, get the nice, you know, the glam out, pop the champagne. And I guess it was a little bit more of a sense of the really, I guess, an understanding of the undertaking ahead and what that pressure would mean to their family as a family. And it's really interesting.
When you talk about this always, I love how you brought that up about, you know, I'm so sorry, right, about this presidency that I have.
I'm sorry about this presidency thing.
Right? But OT, that's real though, because that's it's almost a selfish act, right? And I look at it from the role. I mean, there's a couple of roles. There's almost like 3 different roles I'm looking at that I would love to kind of examine with you really, really quickly. One, the relationship to the president, to his wife and his family. The role of a pastor, you know, to his wife and to his children, right? Because oftentimes the pastor almost become a father figure to a lot of children within the congregation. And how does their own children feel, you know?
Exactly.
And then you look at the role of maybe like a CEO or a really high performing executive, right? Where one part you have to work, you know, 80 hours per week, and you may miss a lot of soccer games, right? But on the flip side, your family gets a chance to have a really great living, comfortable home, comfortable neighborhood, great schooling, probably can go to college debt-free maybe, but there's a cost to that, right? And if you look at the role of president, it's almost like this selfish act by saying, for the next 4 to 8 years, right, you may not have all of my attention, right? And even when I do come upstairs to presidency, you still may not have all my attention as much as I'm going to try, right? And our pillow talk may be strained because I may or may not be able to share with you.
You are 100% right about all of that. I would and that to say that, is it true that the country is better off for having him as president? And even if one, you know, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you might say, well, I criticize him for that, and I wish he hadn't done this in Libya, and I wish he'd done it. If we even just put that aside for a moment and say what it means for America and its history to elect a Black president, is the life of his daughters better? Is the future for the life of his daughters better for being in an America where they elected someone like Barack Hussein Obama to the presidency than one where they didn't? I would argue yes. And so there's a dichotomy there. You're okay, well, it's deferred gratification. You may not have daddy today, but you will have a better country tomorrow. I will say that one of the things I really like, the kind of idiosyncratic thing, is that, President Obama would carve out dinner time. So whatever else was going on, he would make it back for dinner. Now, obviously not whatever else was going on, but it was a kind of tradition that he carved in. And I thought that was a really smart way of protecting the family and the time he can have with them.
I think so too, and I think that the yes and is so good that you've added, right? Because I'll even yes and your yes and we can talk about because of the fact that we saw Sasha Malia, the president, Barack and Michelle's two daughters. For those of you should know the names by now, but just in case you don't, you think about there's almost a sacrifice to them, right? Because we haven't seen even the Bush's twins. They were a little bit older when they entered into the White House versus Sasha and Malia were such at that young critical developmental age. And so it's almost as if they were willing participants to give up that, day-to-day, time with father for what you're saying, for the good of the country, right? And I think that we're not really mindful of what, and I'm actually even thinking about this word as we're talking, we're not mindful of the sacrifice sometimes public servants do when you think about military. Military spouses, right? And if the mom or the father is off deployment, either the mom or the father is there with the children while the mom or the dad is off, saving our democracy abroad, right?
Yeah.
And you don't really think about sometimes, the sacrifice that a child has to make, as a preacher's kid, right? As, mom or dad goes to councils, a congregant member, right?
Yeah.
Or, has to do extra sermons. Like, you just don't really think about that sacrifice. And then I'm not saying you have to answer this. It's kind of almost rhetorical. I think it's almost a case by case. It's like, is it worth it? Right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
In one case, you can say having him, the first Black man, really helped shape America in a world they shall live in. But is it worth the cost of what they had to give up? Right?
Yeah.
And for it.
Yeah.
And it's
and
no
you
different.
Think even more so for people like Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, who ultimately gave everything. They gave their lives and left their children bereft of that. And it's really hard to put a value on these things. I guess I have just a debt of gratitude, obviously, to all those who kind of have laid down and made those sacrifices so we can live in a better world.
Which is so important to first wives, right? It really shows the importance of having that partner, right?
Exactly.
And having that companion, right? Because your partner and companion, is able to hold down the household in a way that frames the sacrifice, to where the sacrifice doesn't feel like you have less than, right? Or
well, it's so interesting
or you have been robbed. It's about the setting of that.
Yeah, and for Michelle in particular, who just amazing. I mean, she's a person that you just uncover, and there's this more amazingness underneath amazingness, and who had this brilliant career, which she had to give up. She spent her entire life studying and preparing for something to go into a career. I mean, she changed careers halfway through, but her career wasn't to kind of have a garden in the White House or to promote healthcare amongst children in the White House. That wasn't her goal. And I think she did something really remarkable in the White House with the initiative she took and the way she went out there, and she can just speak. I don't know. I'm such a fan. I came away such a fan. I mean, I was already, but even more so a fan of Michelle Obama. Just an incredible, incredible woman.
That's what I was asking you in the beginning in terms of some of your takeaways. Like, when you go in, like, what are your thoughts differently? I framed it in narrative of democracy, right? Because I think sometimes you can't help but go and change, right? Like, there's just certain situations I go into, before I walk in, I'm one person, then, oh my God, I have an experience. And I was like, didn't see that coming, right? And then I always leave certain things different than how whence I entered, right? And so even for you, looking at, Michelle, a fan before, and then having to explore the dynamic of this partnership and companionship, and then coming out and what that means. Because what you've been doing, just as I've been thinking about it, is that Michelle and other first wives didn't ask for this, right? Like, this is something that their husbands, I'm saying husbands now until we get a female president. So up until now, like, their husbands did this. It, wasn't something they wanted or desired. And then they have to be stuck with all the good and the bad, for 8 years. It's reminding me of this beautiful, I'm sure you saw this clip, audience, I'm sure you're out there too, you saw this clip between James Baldwin and, oh my God, I just blanked on her name. I'm looking right at her. Oh my God. Audience gonna kill me. I'm gonna send out a tweet. Nikki Giovanni. Jesus Christ. Between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni. And it was this narrative. They were talking about the dynamic of like Black love and Black relationships. Right. And so when Nikki was challenging James Baldwin on video, have you seen this, O-T?
I haven't seen it. I'm gonna check it out.
You have to see it. It's so powerful. She was just like, sometimes I see the worst in you when you come home, right? She says, when you're out there in the world, you're smiling, doing whatever you need to do to get by, acting jovial, laughing, on the job and performing, being performative. And then when you get home, I get the real you. And the real you, I get the tired, I get the frustrated, I get the weak, I get the exhausted. And I don't get the goodness. I don't get the performance. I don't get the smile. Yes, you can come home to your partner. You should be coming to do all things, but I want you to lie to me sometimes, right? Like, I want you to perform. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to always see the ugly, right? Like, I want to experience the good, even if the good is a lie.
Right.
And that blew me away, O-T, when I saw that, right? And so I can only imagine and think about what Michelle had to experience and what she got. We will never know, right? But like what she got when he came into the residence.
Well, they had a no politics policy at the dinner table.
Yeah. That's like rule number one, right? But it's like if you have North Korea, doing test nuclear missile testing, and then if you have Iran nuclear deal, right? Then you have John Rangel. Oh, and by the way, Wall Street is about to tank, and by the way, the automotive industry is about to tank. Like, can you really come and just tell dad jokes at the table?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you can.
Yeah. Right? Or are dad jokes at the table necessary? Is hearing about Sasha and Malia's going on at school necessary to ground you and bring you back into a present? Because when I heard you say that thing about James Baldwin, I don't think the job is for him to come back and perform at home. I think it's to do whatever self-work he needs to do to be able to be present at home and to truly enjoy and appreciate and have gratitude for the lady at home who's there for him. And so yeah, that's what I'd say. Like, everybody has to find a balance. And at some point you get diminishing returns on stress and thinking about this one thing. And so ultimately, I think probably there's some very high functioning people who manage to compartmentalize and put it down and be present and smell a rose and then go back and get back in the fight.
I will say, watch that O-T video, I will say that it made me think differently about coming home to a partner, right? And I think it's often, we're all humans, and so I think it's often easy when we come home to our home, our wives, our partners, our loved ones, our children, to want to be relaxed, and you want to be good, right? But days are hard, right? You know what I mean? And so sometimes it makes me like, I may need to lie, right, in order and be performative, right, just in order to have peace. You know what I mean? Sometimes, right? And I ask myself internally, like, would I want to be lied to? You know what I mean? And I don't know. I haven't really answered that question. I think it's a great narrative that Nikki Giovanni posed.
Well, I mean, just to put it another way, though, I mean, because
this is good. Yes, O-T, go for it.
I personally I generally try and think, okay, how can I be the most truthful possible? And obviously, like, I fail, but I try to be the most truthful possible. But one of the things about the truth is that it's broad. And, there may be a truth that you're so stressed at work and someone annoyed you. It may also be true that your wife's eyes are beautiful. And so more of a question of like, am I going to be truthful? It's like, where do I put my focus? Because there's so much truth around you. Where am I putting my attention?
Yeah, that's it. And I don't want to misconstrue what Nikki Giovanni was saying. She wasn't saying lie in the sense of don't be truthful about, your day, or if I ask you a question, like don't necessarily lie. But she was just saying the lie was almost a representation of perform, right? For me as well, right? Like the way you perform for society, right? The way a Black man has to perform on the job in front of his white colleagues and co-workers, right? The code switching, the performative aspect of it. She was saying like, sometimes perform for me, right? And so that I get a chance to see that joy.
Yeah,
it's right.
Another way of looking at it is entitlement. Like I think sometimes in relationships we feel that, oh, well, I'm entitled to unload on my partner. I have that I can't unload on my boss. I can't unload on my coworker, but I can unload on my partner. I can load on my best friend. And I think sometimes it's a question of like examining one's entitlement. Do I have an entitlement to unload on you before I've asked you how your day is? Before I've sat down, you know what I mean?
Yes. O-T, you lived up to the pressure of doing better than you did on the last conversation that we had. Literally, like I knew you were smart and nuanced and layered, and I already expected that. So that was the baseline. And then you exceeded it. I love talking with you. You have now added another layer of entitlement. I frequently, and depending on the environment, I will bring that up. I don't bring that up all the time because a lot of times people can't handle it. But that's such a very loaded conversation between Nikki and James. But in the way you just did it, you brought something I never thought about in terms of, am I entitled to, right? Like, so there's a question of entitlement and then there's a question of performance, right? And so I had only been looking at the performance space, and then now I'm going to be looking at the entitlement space. And I'm going to answer that, no, I don't think any partner is entitled to having that, right? And so I'm like, because I'm human as well. You know what I mean? Like we're two humans here, right? And so O-T, amazing human being. Just so you know, I feel entitled to DM you now and to load on you all my issues of the day. You know what I mean?
Just bring them to me. Let's work it out.
I think you've come on my show 2 times. I'm entitled to that, right? I'm entitled to go into the DM. What your thoughts are on companionship, entitlement, right? Like performance, the importance of partner, and what that means. And so where can I watch that, O-T?
That is on Showtime.
Hey, that's awesome. O-T, always a pleasure. Look forward to our next conversation, man.